growing up, anxiety wasn't even part of our vocabulary. So I had no idea this was coming out of left field. And we had tried everything, the medication, the self-help books, the diets, the therapists, you name it. Nothing was really helping her. And looking at it, I said, well, why in the world are you anxious? You've got everything you need. You go to a good school, you've got friends, you're popular, you're pretty, all the good things. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And then we finally found RTT, and that's what changed everything. And when I saw the change in my daughter, I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't believe how much better she got overnight compared to the 4 years prior that we spent trying to find the answer. So after that,
Doctors
I
and
said,
therapists and all kinds of stuff, right?
yeah. And I said, I got to study this. So in studying it, I realized, well, you have, MJ, you have anxiety, and you probably gave it to your daughter unknowingly.
Hello, this is Tricia with Metamorphosis Moments, the interview series. And today I am talking with none other than MJ Cassese. And MJ is an RTT therapist, and she specializes in anxiety. MJ lives near Cleveland, Ohio, in the US. And I'm pretty excited to talk with MJ today and find out more about her practice and what she does. So welcome to the chat.
Thanks, Trisha. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always great to meet new RTT people. And I have not met you before today, so this is going to be fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so tell me, you specialize in anxiety and you work primarily virtually, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's the best thing I found for my clients who deal with anxiety is, not having to get up and drive somewhere, find where the place is, parking and all that, and get in there. And by the time you get their anxiety down to a normal level, the time is probably up. So for
Yeah.
me, meeting them over Zoom has been wonderful. They're
Mhm.
normally in their bed, they're in their pajamas, they have their blanket or whatever's comforting for them. And then afterwards, because it can be a little tiring, they're able to just take a little nap and not
Yeah.
have to worry about getting back in their car and driving. So for me, it's worked out wonderful. And then the times are a lot easier for people to navigate that because they don't have to add in the extra
There's
time
no
to
travel
travel.
time, right? Yeah, I love it too because it always feels like, of course, the first question people ask you, well, does it work on Zoom? I'm like, well, of course, as long as I can see you and you can see me and we can hear each other, it's perfectly fine. Um, but I think it's great because, like you said, it's convenient, it's easy, it's immediate. There's no traveling, but more than that, especially if somebody's anxious, nervous, or they're worried about being able to, get into this relaxation, then they're already in their own familiar environment where they feel comfortable and relaxed. And you're not worrying about somebody maybe you don't know very well in your environment because it's just this, you know, comfortable, relaxed conversation you're having with someone over Zoom.
Right.
So I
And
think
there's
it's great.
also, some people, there's a stigma around mental health, and some people may not want to be in their neighborhood and be seen walking into a clinic. And,
Right.
I was talking to another RTT therapist that works with a lot of alcoholics, and she said they would sneak through the back door because they wouldn't want anyone to see what they were up to because they had been hiding that. So, you
It's a good
know,
point.
it just kind of, it just works for everybody. And now since, COVID, the silver lining, everybody learned how to use Zoom. So it's not something foreign, right?
If only we were Zoom developers back in the day, we would
Right.
be, like mega bazillionaires by now. So
Exactly.
yeah, I know. I think it's great. It's like COVID changed our world radically in so many ways, many of which are horrible, but there are also good things that came of it. Like people
Right.
realize not only can they work remotely, they can see a therapist remotely, they can live wherever they want and still hold their job. And you can sit home in your pajamas watching Netflix and get your groceries dropped on your porch.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know,
Yeah.
like, how great is that? And you can see a therapist while you're in your jammies.
Yeah, and unfortunately, COVID made our business skyrocket because it just a lot of the isolation and especially the younger generation, they were isolated from their friends, they were taken out of their normal environments, and
Mhm.
now they're back in the thick of it and having a hard time dealing with it.
Absolutely. It's kind of amazing that way. I think it's that I've had the same experience. So, and it's not even just younger people, it's like everybody, older people, you name it. So,
Right.
yeah, I think it's great. I also see people primarily virtually. Occasionally, I see them in person. Um, I've seen people in my home from time to time, or I travel to them if they're local. But more often than not, it's just easier and more convenient for everybody to do Zoom. For a time I practiced through an office, an actual, mental health clinic. It wasn't an ideal fit for me. So this is just so much better.
Yeah, I agree. Win-win for
Great.
everybody.
So you work primarily with anxiety, and then anything else that goes in with that?
Oh, there's a lot of layers, especially as we get older. We know there's more history or our past, starts to kind of catch up to us with,
Mhm.
what we dealt with in childhood. And, especially my generation, um, you know, our parents did the best they could, and they only did what they knew. And we're starting to realize some of the things that they did or how they brought us up maybe wasn't ideal. And so, as we get older, we start to deal with, overwhelm, stress, overthinking. I was a huge catastrophizer. I would, spend days and nights worrying about everything, always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of that and just, relationships and just, like I said, a lot of the stress that we carry as moms or as women, trying to work, trying to care for the house, trying to care for the kids are aging, and now maybe we're feeling a little lost. A lot of my clients are, my age or in my generation, and you know, our kids are leaving our home, and now what?
Yeah.
I've kind of lost my identity. I need to figure out what's the second half of my life look like. How can I deal with that? And starting to feel some of the things that maybe were buried or starting to surface a little bit. So we deal with all kinds of, um, different things that come up.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you made about losing your identity when your kids leave the nest. And I remember thinking when my kids were first, when I was first having children, and you realize that you're no longer you're somebody's mom to everybody. And it's like sometimes you have to think, I'm not even sure that person even knows my name. They just know that I'm, Zach's mom or whatever. And so you lose your identity as an individual. You're just someone's mother. And you, over the years, embrace that identity and certainly kind of become yourself again to some degree. But you're always overshadowed by that role, aren't you? And then when the children grow and leave you, then you're just standing there like, okay, so what's my purpose?
Right? You kind of lose your
Now
connection.
what?
Right, exactly.
Right.
You just you find yourself working all these years and suddenly you're, coming home to an empty house and it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
What's the rest of my life gonna look like? Why do I feel alone when I'm not alone? Things like that. So,
Yeah.
uncovering a lot of that and sometimes they're realizing maybe their childhood wasn't what they thought it was, and it's starting to surface a little bit and the memories are coming back. And, I've had women with nightmares and I suffered nightmares too for different reasons and understanding where those come from. A lot of them are the trauma based and, what you don't necessarily think is trauma, it can be trauma and
Oh, for
it's self.
sure. Yeah, I think that trauma, because I'm a trauma coach and I do abuse recovery, so I'm certified in all of that. And I think that word trauma is very loaded, right? Because when you say trauma, people think, oh, you were molested, you were beaten, you were raped, you were robbed, somebody was murdered in front of you, that kind of stuff. And it isn't always that. Sometimes it's that little t trauma that creates that emotional wound, right? It could
Right.
just be that, maybe kids called you names when you were in grade school, and somehow that stuck and it created in you this limiting belief that you're not good enough, you're an outsider, you're unlovable, unlikable, whatever. And that's how you operate in the world. So it's those little t traumas that create those emotional wounds that really, I think, and it certainly is what I do with narcissistic abuse recovery, is it's all about the emotional wounds, right?
Mhm.
So that's so completely damaging. And bruises will heal. Somebody can hit you, kick you, whatever. Those bruises will heal. Yes, they leave an emotional scar too, but it's the psychological damage that's done through some of those other forms of trauma, whether it be neglect or bullying, and it is not also, it's not about blaming the mom and dad, because everybody, nobody, well, you say nobody, almost nobody sets out in this world to have children so that they can abuse them, right? It's like
Right.
kids don't come
100%.
with instruction manuals, and the parents are going through their own struggles, and they also are parenting from however they were parented, and that's all that's all so you parent your children and how and how you think you're doing the best you possibly can in that moment. Is it always the very best? No, it's not. Does it harm your children? Yes, sometimes it does, but it's not about blaming them. It's just more
No,
owning it and recognizing your own stuff, right? And then how to get past it.
absolutely. I mean, I kind of learned that firsthand. The reason I got into being an RTT therapist in the first place was my daughter was 19 at the time, that her anxiety was through the roof. And growing up, anxiety wasn't even part of our vocabulary. So I had no idea this was coming out of left field. And we had tried everything, the medication, the self-help books, the diets, the therapists, you name it. Nothing was really helping her. And looking at it, I said, well, why in the world are you anxious? You've got everything you need. You go to a good school, you've got friends, you're popular, you're pretty, all the good things. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And then we finally found RTT, and that's what changed everything. And when I saw the change in my daughter, I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't believe how much better she got overnight compared to the 4 years prior that we spent trying to find the answer. So after
Going to
that,
doctors
I
and
said,
therapists and all kinds of stuff, right?
yeah. And I said, I got to study this. So in studying it, I realized, well, you have, MJ, you have anxiety, and you probably gave it to your daughter unknowingly. Of course, like you
Well,
said, you don't do that on purpose. It
if you're
just,
a catastrophizer, then she
I,
learns that, right?
absolutely. I was a worrier. I was a catastrophizer. I was just always, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I probably projected that on her unknowingly.
Absolutely.
And so for me, it's breaking the generational chain. She had trauma from me somehow, and probably losing my temper more than I should, because I was always on edge, because I was nervous about everything, that what I had made up in my head, whatever, was going on with the
Yeah.
anxiety. And so, of course I didn't do it on purpose. Try to be the best mom you can, but looking back at it now, you can see how from generation to generation, how easily this gets passed on.
Yeah.
But
And it's that old, thing that they tell you, eventually you will become your mother, and as the mom, and you're shouting at your kids about some nonsense, and you literally hear your mother coming out of your mouth, and then you're kind of horrified when you do that, really, because then you recognize how you felt when you were on the other end of that, and that helps you kind of go, okay.
yeah,
I mean, there were things that my mom did, bless her heart. I mean, she was as good as gold, but she was also, I mean, in my current thinking, she was fairly abusive. Um, did she intend it as that? No, never in a million years. It would kill her if she knew that she hurt me in any way, um, because that was never her intention. But
right.
yeah, there was some crap she did that was just really effed up,
Yeah,
you know? And
yeah.
I would actively choose to not be like that with my own kids. Of course, what I've learned through my own, healing is I saw this thing my mother did, and I chose to walk the opposite way. But that thing that she did to me that I found so hurtful is still controlling and guiding my reactions in my relationship with my children. I'm just walking the opposite direction. So in order to get out of that loop, you've got to go sideways.
Right.
Make a
And it's
completely alternate choice. You know,
right.
gosh, if
And
I wish I could go back and reparent my children from day one all over again.
I think we all do,
Yeah.
but again, once I was healed unknowingly, didn't even realize I needed healing until I started to heal and got
Right.
on the other side of it, realizing like how different life is and,
Mhm.
looking at it through a different lens. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Do you ever
And then,
step back and just look at yourself in the journey you've gone on and see how changed and evolved you are from these experiences becoming an RTT therapist?
yeah, it's just, it's amazing to me. And, I got into this more out of curiosity than anything else and benefited so much personally. And I think my family has benefited. I think I'm a better person. I'm a better
Yeah.
mom. I can handle pretty much anything. And, now my kids are grown, but they tell me some things that in the past I might have been like, why did you tell me that? But now it's like, wow, that's cool. They can confide in me and I can just not
Mhm.
really react the way the old MJ would have reacted and
Right.
flipped out and, you know, told him what I thought and, just ruined the conversation. Instead, now I can look at it objectively and say, oh, do you think that's the best thing for you? Or when in the past I might have just been judging and spewing my own
Right.
ideas of how I think life should be. And now I just feel like it's so much better. I have such a better grasp on everything, really, just coping with things and all that. And I give all that to RTT and everything that I've learned. And I just want to, as you said, this is part of getting the word out there on how powerful this is and how life-changing it can be, even when you think your life is pretty good. Because I thought my life was pretty good, other than my daughter having anxiety, things were pretty good.
Yeah.
But you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And, so once we were able to turn that
That's so
around,
true.
it's
That's so
just,
true.
yeah. And now it's just, she's just thriving.
That's
So
amazing. I mean,
really,
it's like any mom's dream is to see their kids, grow and thrive and become the people they're supposed to be. And it's an amazing journey to watch, right?
it really is.
I think
Yeah.
that's probably one of my favorite things about parenting kids was, to see their early interests. My oldest one, from the time she was like 4, I think her first word was horse or neigh. And then she, went into that whole horse life. And then, as she grew a little older, we used to live in the Pacific Northwest, and every year we would take her on a whale watching trip. And she was just smitten by whales. And then through college, she did an internship with a whale conservation organization. And it was her job to actually identify individual members of the whale pods in these huge books of pictures and track their
Wow.
movements and their health and who's had a baby and who's died and who's disappeared and and what the movements are. And so that was pretty cool to watch her evolve. And sometimes she would get these opportunities to do actual like a necropsy on a deceased whale that had washed up on the shore, so they'd find out what happened to it. And that lit this fire in her to become a veterinarian. And so now she's a veterinarian. So you see that evolution from
That's
early
incredible.
childhood with their experiences and what they're interested in, and they just become who they should be, right?
Right.
And similar stories with my youngest one. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool to witness all of that growth and change in your kids.
It really
And
is.
and then of course it's humbling when you realize you really didn't have that much to do with who they become. They always were that person, right?
Yeah, and sometimes they're stifled by, life and just the things that get thrown at them and if how well they can cope with those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is so much about it is, you know, how you handle things.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
no obstacle that you can't overcome. When my kids come with me with some kind of thing, I said, everything is figure outable. There's always a way out. You just have to have the mindset to say, I can do this. I can get past
Yeah.
this.
Right.
And that's a lot of stuff we teach is the confidence in knowing that you have it in you. It's just sometimes it gets stifled somewhere, but being
Yeah.
able to pull that out of people to give them the coping skills or the confidence to do whatever it is that they were trying to accomplish, it
Mhm.
can do amazing things. And it's all in your mind. It's all in how you
You
think.
Do you find that, a big part of working with your clients is also teaching them?
Oh, yeah, I love to teach them because I think that's the most important thing. They have to learn. You have to understand. I try to give them the understanding of why you think the way you think. And when you could wrap your head around
Yeah.
the ruminations or the worry chain that you get on and say, wait a minute, why am I thinking this way
Mhm.
when I don't really have to? I can bring myself back to the present moment where pretty much everything's okay when you're in the present moment.
Yeah.
It's when you're in the future or you're in the past is when things start to get a little
Well, and that's
tricky.
that's part of, what anxiety is. It's a fear of the unknown that might happen, that hasn't happened yet, and it's like catastrophizing that thing. I mean, I've done some pretty profound work with people with anxiety. I've had several people come in who have been like so deep into panic attack mode,
Mhm.
and they have absolute inability, they're petrified by their own fears to do anything. Like some days they can't even get off the couch because they're afraid of everything.
Right.
And then to see them through, sometimes 2 or 3 sessions if it's really bad, and then they just simply blossom into this completely different, comfortable, relaxed person who can get anything and everything done they need to get done, and they just let the rest of it go.
Absolutely.
It's kind of this profound feeling to be on the therapist side of that, to watch that evolution. I think to partner with people and hold their hand through that dark times, it's kind of like wow, right?
Yeah, and it is really I find it really interesting and I absolutely love when you can get people to the other side, which, you know, with what we do, it's achievable
Mm-hmm.
99.9% of the time if the person puts in the work that you know, require and have the commitment, they get to the other side.
Well,
And
that's the interesting point that you bring up there. It's like if they put in the work and they have that commitment. So it's not magic, I think a lot of people, same thing they do when they go see a psychotherapist, they think that you're going to fix their problems and make them go away. It's like, no, the client is the one who's doing the work. The therapist, whether it be an RTT therapist or a talk therapist, we're just facilitating that conversation and enabling them to access their beliefs and their feelings, and to help them make those connections or disconnections, as the case may be, if you're trying to separate an action or a behavior, for example, or just creating new beliefs about themselves, about the world. And then it's them doing that work, though. We're just guiding them to it, right?
right, that's what I say. We're just the guide. I'm just there to show you how to do it. And you know, a lot of clients come in and they don't even know where to start or why or how to even explain how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But we know you don't have to explain it. I get it. We get it. We understand all of it and we can help you get to the bottom of it. And that's
Yeah.
what, you know, RTT is so miraculous at doing it in such a, a month to 3 months on any given issue. It's just amazing. And I
And how
just,
many years have you seen your talk therapist, and how far have you gotten down the road with that? And how many hundreds and thousands of dollars have you spent on talk therapy, whether it be co-pays or cash pays? How much money are you spending and how much time are you spending trying to address this, and getting very little traction on it? Whereas you come see an RTT therapist and we're going to get some movement on this fairly quickly.
yeah. And also, people who are medicating, they're taking medication to try to get relief. And in doing so, you're kind of just numbing yourself. You're
Well, yes,
not feeling anything. So
because ultimately, don't you think the anxiety or whatever the presenting issue is only the symptom of the real problem? And therefore, that medication is only a band-aid to, make that symptom of anxiety more, you know, comfortable.
absolutely. It's kind of like, you step on a thorn and you keep agitating it and and it swells up and then you just try to get it out. You just keep nicking at it, nothing's happening. And then RTT pulls the thorn out completely.
Yeah.
When you're going to therapy or taking medication, you might be just kind of picking at it, but with RTT, we
Yeah.
pull it out and get rid of it. We're not treating the symptoms. We're not trying to, heal the sore. We're actually getting to the root of that
No,
sore.
we're trying to figure out what caused the sore to begin with, what caused that thorn to go in there.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can figure out what caused the thorn to get into your foot, and you can eradicate that part of it, then you're not going to get another thorn. And then once we pull it out, you're just good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
So
pretty
medication
powerful.
is just a Band-Aid that covers up and masks the symptom, which is the anxiety, the visible part, the depression, the whatever the thing is you come for. So that medication is only masking it.
Yeah, and speaking from experience, my daughter had she started taking medication, and then now we're dealing with side effects. Not
Right.
only is she anxious, now she's nauseous. She
Well,
can't eat.
yeah. And a lot of those meds are antidepressants that you take for anxiety and panic attacks. And what's one of the side effects from a lot of those? Also depression.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that make sense that your antidepressant can make you depressed? And then, the incidence of suicidal ideation when you're taking anxiety medications in particular is really high.
Yeah.
So how does that make sense?
Yeah. And I know that it works for some, so it's not a complete, failure of the system. But if people are trying to be, more healthy, get off taking less
Right.
substances, this is the way to go.
So many of those substances, especially if they're, the benzie type, you will never get off of them once you start taking them without severe, contraindications of anything. You're going to have a really bad time getting off of them.
Right. Right.
So why even go there? I mean, I've taken them. I've been in that place where I was so deeply depressed and anxious, and the only solution was to medicate in order to keep me from killing myself. And that's, literally where I was at with things. So yeah, I did take those things, but as quickly as I could get off of them, I did. And I'm pretty sure I stopped taking them almost immediately after my first RTT session, because I recognized that I no longer felt those ways, and I just stopped taking them.
Yeah. Do you find with some of your clients that after the session, after the 30 days of listening to the tape or the follow-up sessions, you find that you have to kind of remind them of some of the things that they said in the beginning because they have completely forgotten that they ever felt that way. It's almost
Yeah, I
like
think that's true. Because of the three ways that you change. One is that immediate aha moment in the session, which of course they're very aware of. And then the other two ways are more subtle, right? So, it's a gradual progression where you gradually let go of something, or you simply it just disappears and you didn't even notice it leaving, and you ingrain this new way of being, and you forgot you felt that way. So I started doing a questionnaire, and I don't know, a lot of RTT people do this, where I ask them, I think it's around 30 or 40 statements in our first meeting, in our intake. And there are things like, and I ask them, how much do you agree or disagree with this on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, I feel joy. I feel anxious. I often laugh, just things like that. And and then I ask them more in-depth questions around those as well. And I record all of these answers on a piece of paper. And then after we've done a few sessions, or at the end of the program, whatever we're doing, I will ask them those again. And it's almost always they forgot. And I'll remind them, well, you were a 2 on this, but now you're a 9. Really, I don't remember feeling that way. So I think it's really useful for them to reflect. And then I'll present them with the document, so that they have a record of how their responses changed. And I think it's really eye-opening for people to recognize how they've changed, because sometimes you don't even notice you're changing, right?
Right. And also, people may question like, well, is this a temporary change? But it isn't. We're changing the makeup of the way you're thinking. The neurons in your
Yeah.
brains are refiring new, better beliefs about yourself, and you can't go back. It's like learning that there's no Santa Claus. You can't go back to ever believing there was one. because you know now. So,
Right.
you know, it's those beliefs are permanent, and they just grow stronger. You know, if you check with the client 6 months out, a year out, they're doing better than they were 6 months ago. It just continues to get better
Mhm.
as time goes on, which is really just one of the amazing things that I just love about it.
Yeah.
You probably see it in yourself, but I see it in my daughter every day. She's just, you know,
Yeah.
the most confident, self-assured young lady you would ever want to meet. And, you know, 5 years ago, she, you know, was not. So, you know, it's miraculous to see, and I just really get the joy out of, and I'm sure you do as well, changing people's lives for the better. Like, you know, everybody needs to be on this plane of joy and happiness and realizing life is not all bad. There's so many good things, and
Right.
it's all in how you see it. Glass half full, glass half empty, you know?
Yeah, and I think some people are just, naturally because of the way they were raised or the way their brain is wired, whatever, they're just, naturally either glass half full or a half empty kind of people. Does that mean you always have to be a half empty person? No, not at all. I mean, it's mindset, right? So I can choose to be positive. I can choose to see the world as a wonderful place with many opportunities, or I can choose to see that there are a lot of bad people who are out to get me. Right. And so which experience do you want? Do you want to feel like that person that believes people are bad and they're out to get you? Or do you want to feel like there are so many opportunities, I just need to grasp one, right? So
Right.
it's all about the way you experience things. Wouldn't you rather be the positive person who sees opportunities rather than, monsters in the dark? I mean,
Yeah, or
I
being
prefer
the
that.
victim and everything too. The
Yeah.
people, a lot of the victim and everything, and just always
I see a lot of that with the clients that I work with, because they have been victims in many cases their entire lives. And so they come into my, practice, into my sessions. And sometimes that's a big piece of the work, is breaking down that victim mentality. And they don't even recognize they're doing it
right.
because they truly believe they aren't capable of supporting themselves or ever having an authentic, loving relationship, or, they're not worthy of being loved or liked or respected. So, because they believe they're bad people and
Right. They deserve it
they
somehow.
deserve it somehow. Yeah, all of these things. And so they'll cling to that because a lot of it is through narcissistic abuse, a person loses their identity because their identity is so tied into their abuser. And without the abuser in their life, they have no value, no worth. They cease to exist on some level in their thinking. So if we also let go of this person who is standing here before you today, then obviously I'm no longer here, right? I stopped to exist. And that's a huge piece of work right there to get through, to really get through. I mean, it certainly was my feeling when my own marriage broke up. I truly believed it was my fault. I did it. I was a bad person. He would do terrible things to me and I would apologize to him for it. I mean, and looking at that from the outside, that makes no sense. But this is how we're conditioned to think and believe everything's our fault, right? It's brainwashing. And so when he discarded me, I thought, well, if this person who I think that I love and adore with every fiber of my being, he's my person. And if he doesn't love me, want me, or care about me, obviously I'm not worth being here. And that's just patently untrue, all of it. Of course, the reality is anybody that's been through a long-term narcissistic abusive relationship, you don't actually love them. You love who you think they are, and they
Mhm.
are not that person. They never have been. It's all an act. It's a lie. It's a story. They're just a complete charade for your benefit to trap you. And
Right.
so learning that you don't actually love them and you never did. You love who you think they were. And then you can also recognize that not only that they never loved you, they were just using you.
Right. But also, it comes down to learning to love yourself again.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you love yourself unconditionally, you're
You
not
will
going to attract
never
those type
allow
of
that.
people again.
No,
They
no,
will run from you
they
because
will.
they just know that
They're
you are
users.
powerful now, where maybe you
Yeah.
were, the weak one because they saw the trauma in you somewhere and you were an
Oh,
easy target. And so,
yeah. That's a misconception though, because a lot of people coming out of these relationships believe that they're weak or stupid or undesirable or whatever. And it's never been that. In fact, you were strong, you were smart, you are capable, you are all of these beautiful, wonderful things. You're either naive, you're too forgiving, maybe, but you were never weak. And if you
right.
were weak, you would never have survived this relationship.
True.
So now you're weak coming out of it because they've worn you down into a shell of your former self.
Sure.
But the reason a narcissist is attracted to somebody is, yes, because they're manipulatable, because maybe they're naive or they forgive too easily or whatever. But they also are drawn to you because you're all the things they aren't. You're kind, you're loving, you're strong, you're smart, you're whatever, you're funny, all the things that they are not, that they pretend to be to get you into a relationship.
Hmm.
And they wear all of that down till you're just like a little nubbin of your former self at the very end. And so, yeah,
It's amazing the work you do to pull those people out of that, because I know that is not an easy thing. Um, when people are with narcissists, it takes a lot of courage for them to get away. And, you
well,
know,
the average woman, and I say woman because 70% of them are female. Um, the average woman, it takes her 7 times to leave the abuser. And then people will shame her and say things to her like, well, if it was so bad, why didn't you leave? I'm like, well, that's victim shaming. And secondly,
yeah,
that just says you're naive and you don't understand the dynamics here of the abuser. I mean, it's essentially Stockholm syndrome.
right.
You're brainwashed into believing somehow it's your fault, you deserved it, and this person is the light of your life and you love them dearly. So of course you make excuses for their bad behavior. You gaslight yourself into thinking it's your fault because that's how they brainwashed you to do. And it's hard to leave. And a lot of these people are tied to these abusers because of finances, because of kids, because of any number of things that makes it difficult to leave. Sometimes they'll have a business together, or young children. And in many cases, the woman is completely without financial resources if she leaves him. And then, they don't actually care about the kids either. They only use the children to make themselves look like this acceptable, normal, dad of the year type person.
Hmm.
And the kids are an inconvenience and cost them money. So they don't really care. They'll fight for the custody so that they don't have to pay as much child support, but they don't actually parent their children.
Yeah, and that's a sad truth that,
Yeah.
narcissists can do those kinds of things, and people can fall victim unknowingly for years. And,
Mhm.
but knowing there is a way out, with
Yeah.
support and help and, you
Yeah.
know, all those things that you can overcome, that part of your life, and there is hope.
Well, the biggest takeaway, and I think you said it, was it's about learning to truly, deeply, authentically love yourself and put your needs above other people's. And that's not selfish doing that.
No, no, that's actually better. It's kind of like putting your oxygen mask on first.
That's
You can't.
exactly it. They tell you that on the airplane, put your mask on first before you help your children. So, and Marissa does a little video I've seen her do where she talks about, I have 2 cups and this one's empty and this one's full. So I'm pouring from my full cup into the empty cup. So I'm filling up somebody else's cup. But now my cup is empty and I'm still trying to pour, but
Hmm.
I don't have anything left to give. So I need to find somebody to fill me up, whether that's myself or someone else. And that's exactly what that abused victim does. She's still trying to pour into everybody else, but she doesn't pour into herself. And I think
Right.
women are really guilty of this in general, whether they're in an abusive relationship or not. We take care of ourselves, our hair, or we take care of our kids, our hair, our clothes, our house, our car, our cat, our dog, our job, but we don't take care of ourselves.
Right. Yeah, and I do see a lot of people pleasers as well. People that are feeling like they constantly have to help others to make themselves, feel worthy, I guess. And
Yeah.
it's really not the case. You really need to just look within. You don't need the outside stuff to tell you that you're worthy because,
Yeah.
you know, it's just learning that about yourself. And, through this, people learn a lot about themselves that they
Yeah.
didn't even know was missing, if you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, to me, it was just mind-blowing revelation after one and after another. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like peeling an onion. You peel off the first couple layers. I had a client one time that came in for anxiety, and when I checked with her, after our follow-up, and she's like, and I lost 10 pounds, not even on purpose. And it was, we sort of laughed. I'm like, well, those are the great side effects of RTT. You feel so good about yourself that you want to feed yourself better food and in more healthy foods because now you're conscious of it.
Taking better care of yourself. Yeah.
Right. So it's amazing the positive ripple effects it can have on people
Mhm.
when you clean up one thing, it kind of cleans up a few things all at once.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really
And it's, like the focus of RTT is always one presenting problem at a time. But isn't it interesting how so many times when you focus on one thing, whether it be anxiety or what have you, then all of a sudden you do get that ripple. And all this other stuff just sort of fell away.
right, right. Yeah, it's you know, and like I say, it just continues to improve as time goes on. You
Mhm.
know, more confidence you have, the more willing you're to put yourself out there. The more you put yourself out there, the more confidence you got, and so forth. It just sort of snowballs in a beautiful way.
It really does. Wow, MJ, this was a really delightful conversation, and I appreciate you coming today and talking with me about all things RTT. And I'm so happy you're out there in the world doing this beautiful work. And
Yeah,
tuning
it's been
in.
my pleasure, Trisha. It was great meeting you. And, the more we can get information out there about what we do and how we can help people, the better.
There are
Changing.
choices in the way you heal. Some work better than others.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
it's
like
not a
I say,
one size fits all.
no, no. But, I feel like once you've tried everything else, it's time to try RTT.
And so often people come
It's
to us as the last case, and then then they'll say like, "Why didn't I try this first?"
right,
It's like, I
right.
don't know. I don't know why you didn't. But here you
Exactly.
are. It doesn't matter.
Right?
You're here now. Well, thank you
Exactly.
for coming today, and thank you for our viewers for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Take care.
Yeah.